Hello everyone, Justin Vacula here with video number 10 of my Stoic Philosophy video series. This video will be on Epictetus Discourses, Book 1, Chapter 9. You can find me online at justinvacula.com, also Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Today working with a new computer, a new setup, a new webcam, so hopefully everything with this goes well in videos today and later in the series. So let's get to the text. This title is "What should we conclude from the doctrine of our kinship to God?" Epictetus talks a lot about kinship, which values we should have, what's important, how we should deal with people in power, in politics, and which virtue should we aspire to. So one of the first points of the chapter here is that we are a citizen of the universe. He writes, when one is asked where one is from, never to say, "I am an Athenian," or "I am a Corinthian," but rather, "I am a citizen of the universe." For why do you say that you are an Athenian, and not a native of that corner on which your paltry body was thrown out at birth? Or is it not plain that you take your name from some more sovereign domain, which embraces not only that corner and your whole household, and in general that land from which the race of your ancestors has come, from your forebears down yourself, and that is after some such place as this that you call yourself an Athenian or a Corinthian? So here I think Epictetus is getting at the point that it's merely an accident of birth where we are, that we shouldn't be focused so much on the land which happens to be around us now, where we were born, what our family name is, but rather, what is it to be a human? What is important about our lives? What can we think about in relation to other human beings? How are we like others? How can we have some kinship with rational creatures, as he mentions here? So rather than being so focused on our land, our nationality, we can be focused on the picture of a whole, that we are a citizen of the universe. He continues, "Why may not the man who understands the administration of the universe and has learned that the greatest and most important and comprehensive of all things is the system in which man and God are associated, and that from him the seeds of being are descended, not only to my father or grandfather, but to all things that are begotten and grow on earth, and especially to rational creatures?" So here it's more thought about this, that it's not just us and our family, but rather we have relations with all humans. There is this kinship, there is this association that we have with other rational beings, and that's what we should focus on. He talks about God here, and God is brought up a lot in the text. For those who are secular, it's obviously a different time that we're reading this text and thinking about it, that we don't have belief in gods or the supernatural. For many of us, we've come to more understanding about the world, and we've decided that that's not the route to go. We can still say that there is this kinship, that there is this relation between humans, and that we want to treat each other well, that we want to practice virtue. We don't need God to explain that, but rather we see common link within nature rather than referring to a God. He talks about, what about our relation with rulers? He says that that offers no contentment. He writes, "Shall kinship to Caesar or any other amongst those who hold great power at Rome enable a man to live safely and secure against contempt and void of all fear whatever? And shall not having God as our maker and father and guardian free us from all grief and terrors? But how shall I feed myself," someone says, "for I have nothing? Why, how do slaves, how do runaways? To what do they trust when they run away from their masters? It is to their land, their servants, their silver plate? No, to nothing but themselves." So this is more talk about self-reliance, on we can have our values, we can have our virtues, we can be confident in our own ruling, our rational faculty. This comes up a lot in the Stoic text, that rather depending on some ruler, some sovereign body to give us what we need, we can simply rely on ourselves and those around us who matter. This thought about rulers comes up throughout the text, as they're not so important, and their virtues, their values are in keeping power and amassing riches. This isn't the way we should go, although there is some talk that the Stoic can be a just ruler, but this shouldn't be the focus of our concern. If we happen to be called to political office, we find ourselves in that, we can aspire to politics, and perhaps this would come up more in Marcus Aurelius's text, but for Epictetus, he doesn't see the rulers as so great, and here he talks about the slaves. Well, the slaves can be relying on the master for land or food, but what happens when they run away? Well, they have to rely on themselves. They need something else. So what is that? What is this self-reliance? Well, we're going to rely on reason, our ruling faculty, and be content with our lives and what we can do for ourselves. That if we're going to rely on others, we're going to rely on externals, that's only going to lead us to ruin. He continues here. And must our philosopher, when he travels away from home, place his confidence in others and rely upon them, and not take care of himself? Must he be baser and more cowardly than irrational beasts, each of which is self-sufficient and lacks neither its proper food nor the way of life appropriate to itself and its nature? So here more self-reliance talk. How is our way of life in line with nature? This is a common theme throughout the Stoic text, that we're supposed to be living with a rational life, that we're going to examine the world around us, make appropriate judgments about that, and live life accordingly. Aspire to greatness, aspire to virtues, find meaning, and live a good life. We're not going to be like the irrational beasts he talks about. This comes up elsewhere in the text, that as man we're distinct from animals, and that we can have reason, that we can blush, as he talks about in some case, that we can feel guilt, we can feel these emotions that are different from other living beings. So we want to wonder, is our way of life a good one? Are we aspiring to the good things in life? And we go on, there's some talk about death here. He talks about death as non-evil, as a natural thing, back again to the place from which we came. He writes, are these things not indifferent and nothing to us? And is not death no evil? Are we not akin to God, and did we not come from him? Suffer us to go back again to the place from which we came. Suffer us at last to be delivered from these fetters that we are fastened to and weigh us down. So yes, death is something that's going to naturally happen. If we're going to have so much fear about death, it's going to stop us from doing things in life, this isn't going to be good. Of course, we're to be cautious and careful, but we ultimately have to realize that this is something we have little control over. Sure, we can lead a cautious life, we can exercise, we can keep good health, but ultimately death is going to come. It's going to be a natural thing that happens. This isn't something that should hold power over us. He talks of this as being an indifferent, something that we shouldn't really be concerned about, something that's outside of our sphere of choice, our control. That talk about our body, others' power that they may have over it means nothing. More talk about the rulers, the tyrants, other people who might wish to do harm to us. Well, they might harm our flesh, they might harm our body, but we still have control over our ruling faculty, and that's what is important on Epictetus' view. He continues here, thieves and robbers in courts of law, and those who are called tyrants, are thought to have some power over us because of our poor body and its possessions, suffer us to show them that they have power over nobody. So this is a perspective that we're to take, that people might have power over us. We might think, we might fear these people, but rather we shouldn't place such a high importance on their power. We shouldn't have this excessive fear, that we should live our lives independently of this. We shouldn't be so concerned about these rulers, these thieves, that we're to just make do with what we have. Surely not giving up all of our possessions or resigning ourselves to some slavery sentence, but rather living a good life, not having these fears, not having this crippling anxiety that's going to stop us from pursuing virtue. He talks about this weeping for tomorrow, and that excessive worry simply isn't good. Should we be so concerned about the future when we don't have control over it? No, this doesn't appear to be the way to be. We're going to wonder what's in our control, make do with what we have, and live life accordingly. He writes, be content to remain in this place where he has stationed you. The time of your abiding here is short, and easy to such are disposed like you. For what tyrant, what robber, what thief, or what courts of law are formidable to those who thus account the body and its possessions as nothing? Stay, do not depart without reason. So here, the topic of suicide is mentioned, that we're not simply to leave life with no good reason, but rather we have the option to end life if such a situation arises. But we're not to simply end it for no good reason. we're going to evaluate and live accordingly, live a good life, and that life is a good thing if we're able to have this virtuous life, if we're able to accomplish a virtue, we're able to have goals, we're able to live meaningfully. But we have this option to end it if life becomes too overwhelming. But the Stoic philosophy here is talking to us how to better deal with things, to not be in this big spiral of anxiety, depression, that we can make do with life, that we can still live a good life even though there are hardships, even though there are setbacks. He continues here, "The door is open, why do you lament? What room is left for tears? What occasion for flattery? Why should anyone envy another? Why should he be struck with admiration for those who have great possessions or are placed in positions of power, especially if they are strong and quick to anger? For what will they do to us? The things they have the power to do will be of no concern to us. The things we care about they cannot affect." So with riches, with power, comes ignoble traits. This envy, this anger, this greed, this lust, these aren't good things that are often associated with a lust, a want for power. This comes up very often in the text, that if we're to have fewer desires, well, then we won't be so disappointed. We won't be constantly wanting more that we can never get, as this train seems to continue and continue and continue. The people with riches want more riches, they're never satisfied. This doesn't seem to be a good way to go. So rather, we should live a modest life, have fewer desires, and prioritize this richness of soul he talks about in the text, of being self-reflective, of pursuing virtue, of having a good life, and that not being focused on externals, but rather be focused on reason, focus on cultivating our own minds, self-reflection, studying philosophy, and again, living a good life, pursuing virtue. The things we care about, they cannot affect. So if we care about this self-examined life, we care about study, we care about philosophy, well, what are the rulers, what are the people in power going to do about it? What are powerful people going to do with their riches? Well, they can amass wealth, but we're simply not going to care about that. It's not going to be of great concern to us. If we can live a modest life, if we can sustain ourselves, then what else do we really have to worry about? He talks here of greatness of soul, this noble spirit coming from within. He writes, "We flatter those who can help us in those matters and dread the very same persons." So if we're to try to give this great impression to these other people who have wealth and power, and then fear them, this isn't a good situation to be in. We just should ditch these values. We shouldn't be concerned about great power, great money, but rather live modestly. He writes, "Shall I then, who can get greatness of soul and a noble spirit from myself, try to get an estate or a sum of money or a position from you? Heaven forbid. I will not be so insensible of my own possessions. But if a person is cowardly and abject, what else is necessary but to write letters to him as if he were dead?" So this isn't this good state to be in, that if we're cowardly, if we have these poor values, we're like a corpse. This isn't the fulfilled life. This isn't the way we want to be. So rather, we should think about what we should value, wonder whether our desires are good ones, and have aversions for things like great power, great wealth, because this isn't going to be a good life to live. This isn't what we should aspire to. So the Stoic philosophy here of Epictetus calls on us to be self-reflective, to recognize our relationship with others, to be part of the world, to be socially engaged, and to live a good life, not to focus on externals, not to focus on great power and wealth, for these things might bring about some bad traits in people. Alright, thank you for watching. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, leave your comments below. You can find me online at justinvacula.com, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you'd like to support my work, feel free to donate. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more.